Hey, it's been a minute since us three have done this together, all three of us. Hey. Hello, and welcome to a Loyalty Cup discussion. Today, we are going to start with our general impressions of this movie, and then move into a sort of explainer, hashes out some of the more abstracted parts of this movie, right? Then we're going to jump whole hog into spoiler discussion. Is your hog ready?
No.
Ugh. But before any of that, I'm Richie.
I'm Sean.
I'm Andy.
Andy, what's this movie all about?
Suspiria is a remake by Luca Guadagnino of the original 1977 Suspiria by Dario Argento, Italian filmmaker. This film follows Susie, played by Dakota Johnson, as she travels to Berlin to join the renowned Marco's Dance Company. As she's welcomed into this troupe of dancers, strange occurrences and evil rituals simmer and build under the surface of this looming, suspenseful witch drama.
40 years after the original, Luca Guadagnino made this beautiful, visually stunning movie.
Gorgeous.
Audiences are coming out, it has an F cinema score. That means people hate this thing walking out of the theater. Critics, it's polarizing. They either love it, masterpiece, or it's masturbatory. Sean, what's your history with the original? How do you feel on this one?
My history with this film, I saw it as a late teenager. Was actually pretty bored by it. The original opens up, incredible visuals, but then it kind of slows down.
It's shiny, it's bright.
I love it for, I guess, the imagery. It's a cool story. It's kind of unfair to compare this one to the other. They had 40 years to make it better. The 2018 version, I liked. I actually really liked it. There's just certain parts of this movie, certain aspects that are unforgivable, and I don't see why they made the decisions they did, and those decisions will probably keep me from watching this 2.5-hour movie again. Thought it was great. Certain things are very, very stupid.
Andy, how do you feel on this?
I agree with Sean. I think there's a few glaring errors, but with those aside, it is a beautiful movie. It's really very well directed. The choreography with the dance scenes is impeccable. I haven't seen any other movie like that. The set design, the makeup design, everything was kind of on point, and it really created this atmosphere of kind of looming dread that really supported the film. So I liked it, but I agree with Sean. There are some errors and flaws.
And I think of the three, I might have liked it the most. I only have one qualm with it, and I think it's the same as yours, but to me the qualm is small when I stack it up against all the things that are so wonderful about this movie. I really do think it is visually stunning. I love the soundtrack. I love the story, how it plays out. I mean, I could really go on and on about it. We'll try not to in this video. So before we try to do any of that, let's just jump into our spoiler/explainer speed round. All right, so we're going to jump into kind of explaining out some of the blurry details of this movie. Again, this is our interpretation.
Coffee. I had a little coffee burp. I had to get it off.
Yeah, so this is just our interpretation. We're hoping that it helps you and guides you and yours. But, we don't have all the facts.
Yeah, help us out if you know better.
I'm sure you do. So Andy, let's start. Who are the three mothers?
So the three mothers you hear about throughout the whole movie are essentially the three women who, from Argento's film we know, were the original women that created witchcraft. And so their stories kind of culminate into this 1977 version of Suspiria that we now know. They have their homes in various parts of the world. I think one of them is supposed to be in Germany, which is why this dance troupe is so close to it. So you have Mother Suspiria, which is kind of revealed at the end to be a large part of this film. She's the mother of sighs. And that's important because at various parts of the film, especially with Susan's mother, she's sighing, she has labored breathing, so they bring that up a lot. You also have Mother Tenenbaum. She's the mother of darkness, so just about evil and treachery, that sort of thing.
She's supposed to be the most violent one.
Mother Lacrimarium, the mother of tears.
Well, this vote happens in the beginning of the movie. What's that all about?
No, I don't know. It just seems to be an impromptu vote for the head of the coven. So it's a vote between two witches. Looks great.
Mother Marcos.
Mother Marcos and Mother Blanc.
Madame Blanc.
Madame Blanc. Well, that's the thing, is she doesn't call herself a mother.
Well, she doesn't even think that Marcos is a mother, because she isn't, technically.
Hey.
Whoa.
Come on, man. At the end of the vote, Marcos is the winner.
So with that in mind, where does Mother Suspirium go for this film?
So that is another one that's kind of tough to answer. She isn't a presence ostensibly in this movie right away, but she is there, similar to the relationship to the Dakota Johnson character, Susie. So Susie, in the way that I think we've been able to kind of put together, has Suspiriorum remnant in her, or something about Suspiriorum is calling to her.
She has a dormant sigh within her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so she, from youth, there's cuts of her at 10 years old having something calling her to Berlin. She finally gets out there, and it's as she starts engaging with this witchcraft that Suspiriorum comes back to basically have a reckoning on Marcos for what is kind of a perversion or an abuse of power.
Yeah, she's not a true mother. And there is some strife between Blanc and Marcos because of this. Blanc seems to be more of the true witch, knowing that she is not necessarily a mother, and also refusing to act as though Marcos is as well.
And this sort of struggle is actually supposed to mirror the setting and the outside struggle that's happening between West and East Germany and the RAF and all that. Who is the demon figure, black thing that comes out of the ground?
Death.
Simple as that.
Yeah, she just summons death. Apparently death is summoned to do the reckoning. Mother Suspirium's reckoning, and to basically destroy not only the false mother, but her supporters, which was rad.
Very
Loved
cool.
it.
How do we know that is death? IMDb.
Yeah, the web.
I want to jump into this movie. I want to talk some of the deets. Why don't you guys tell me what you guys thought of the horror aspects of this film?
I'd be happy to. I thought they were great. The opening death of Olga was one of the most grotesque things I've ever seen on film. Was ugly. It was disturbing just seeing this girl helplessly be pretzeled by unseen forces, and just seeing her body go through the trauma. It seemed to last forever. Never a good sign when a woman urinates.
Unintentionally.
Yeah, well, okay. Sorry, I don't want to urine shame anyone, but...
The part that got me was this and just the bile coming out of her mouth.
The bile and having... It's pretty good. And seeing her jaw dislocate, and just... When you think that she can't be folded up anymore... She gets a new crease in her.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. I loved it. And then they come in and just hook her. She's just laying there, and you just hear her basically unconsciously breathing, and they just hook her like a bale of hay and drag her out of the room and just leave that bile and blood puddle there. It was made me super uncomfortable. That was I just think a great display of violence on film. Beautiful.
But part of also that same scene, and I think that scene is a great like little window as to how all the horror is treated. So you have that, and it's so gruesome and intense, brutal. It puts you in that moment, and it really makes you linger there for a while. But it was also elegant and beautiful. It has intercutting scenes from the dance that's coordinating with it. The sound is amazing, the shuffling, the cuts, the movements. The choreography is really beautiful, and being invited in that way to something so beautiful, and then only to be shown just total brutalization of this woman. It really was one of the more intense horror scenes I've seen in a really long time.
I think the fact, too, that it takes place in a locked-up room that she can't escape from, that alone is terrifying. And then when the dance sequence starts and you realize what's happening and there's no escape from it, that it's all the more powerful because of that. When the face is being smashed against the mirrored glass, is that supposed to be a callback to the original glass shattering scene?
I thought so in the trailer because I saw that, and that's one of my favorite scenes in the original film, having her face just pressed against that glass. It was really just ugly and
funny too.
Kind of funny.
Yeah.
So there's certain callbacks to the original Suspiria film, certain themes and elements that are reintroduced. For instance, the counting of the steps. You've got Susie's mother with her labored breathing and her kind of snoring way of breathing mirrors Mother Marcos's snoring in the original. She's behind the curtains, and you know she's there because you can hear her snoring. You got the iris room as well. So there's these little nods to the film that I enjoyed, and if you enjoyed the original film, it's a nice little charge for you.
In this movie, Marcos and Suspiriorum, separate characters completely. In the original, they're separate names for the same character. Should we talk about the last scene? I feel like we gotta jump in.
I mean, the body horror that you're introduced to at the beginning of the film continues to a great degree towards the end of the movie, privy to one of the most hellacious Black Sabbaths I've ever seen in my life.
Susie basically goes down to this ceremony room, and they're going to transfer the witch from Marcos into Susie.
But Suspiriorum shows up to the scene, basically intercepts it. But what makes that scene so powerful, the atmosphere I think that Guadagnino built in there, it was hellish. It felt like being in hell.
There's a basic indicator when Tilda Swinton's character, Madame Blanc, says there's something wrong here, and she basically tells Susie, you don't have to do this right now if you don't want to. And I think she recognizes something else is happening than what their intended purpose is. When you see the chanting and the dancing and this creepy dude singing to the camera.
Beautiful voice.
That all culminates into this just like eerie, evil thing going on. And then when it's revealed what's actually going on, it just becomes grotesque.
Thing indicates something is wrong more than just a crowd of people screaming.
Naked.
Yeah, you hear, because, all right, I mean, we're glossing over the fact that Marcos is ugly as hell.
Demented demon body.
It's great makeup. Perfect. It was amazing.
It's awful.
The prosthetics.
It's absolutely grotesque.
With welding goggles.
Really bright down there.
It was funny and disgusting at the same
Little
time.
baby arms, you get baby parts. So
naked too. They couldn't find a big t-shirt to throw on.
Yeah, just throw some gauze on this woman. We're just feasting our eyes on this rotten sandwich of a woman, and then you just hear the screams from the other witches, and it's intense. And then you find out why. Death comes in.
Which looks like a weird, as you said, an insidious demon almost, like from the movie Insidious.
Yeah, the character design, I mean, is debatable. Looked a little funny to me.
I think it was very simple. Like, that's as creative as a movie as this was. That demon design was kind of really basic, but it drove it home.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
It was really scary stuff.
It wasn't bad. But just hearing the screaming.
You can't talk about just the feeling of being in the room enough. Like, you're in that room for what feels like 20 minutes, and the shift from it being just the worst sort of occult scene of people shaking and dancing and moving and singing, to the body horror, to the demonic thing that comes up, the red, the blood.
The blood
The
shit.
slow motion.
I mean, if you know any, I mean, yeah, all it takes to get to my heart is just geysers of blood, and there was so much of it. I mean, Tilda Swinton getting half decapitated was some of the best bloodshed I've ever seen in a movie.
The Tom York soundtrack coming up and it being the most tragic song. I was really put into a place of despair. Like, I couldn't shake it for a long time.
Well, it also validated all the horrors and fears that the movie built up to. As much as the one ritualistic dance may have caused the girl's body to be contorted and like half kill her, this really just went full force and showed you, no, everything you've been watching is real. And it's happening beneath the floor.
And I imagine the shoot had to have been super surreal. You and all your friends you've been hanging out with for a few months, naked in the same room, and there's actually somebody singing in this chamber, fake blood everywhere.
Should be so lucky.
Well, I also heard that Tom York made the soundtrack or the score before the film was finished.
Most
so
of it,
a lot of them, they could play the music while it was happening and then dub it afterwards for effect. But yeah, so they probably were in a situation where people were screaming, yelling, there was music blaring, and they had a handheld 35mm camera going around. They probably had real special effects with blood squirting everywhere. Had to be creepy.
Let's talk about the soundtrack.
Soundtrack was done by Radiohead's Tom York.
I was very excited to see that.
I was too. That being said, I thought the soundtrack was great except for when you actually heard Tom York singing in it. It was kind of a distraction because his voice is so recognizable.
Yeah, it's tied into one of the greatest music groups of all time.
It's so distinct that you hear the sound and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm watching a horror movie and there's Tom York. Not to say that it was bad, but it was a little bit, not to say it was bad at all, but it was just...
It was beautiful, just kind of distracting.
Distracting. Vocals in a soundtrack is a bold choice, and it's just one of many that this director took.
I really did enjoy certain aspects of the soundtrack. In particular, the audition scene. She's spinning and spinning, and there's just a small flourish of sound that's just like this like synthesized sort of twinkling. It was just rad and lasted half a second, and then boom, you're back in it.
Yeah, and the choreography was incredible. Me and Richie were talking about we're not fans of dance. We're a couple artsy boys, but never been able to really appreciate dancing.
Yeah, I've tried, and I don't know if it's something I can really take in.
And granted, there's an ignorance to it,
yeah,
I can admit, but it's also, there's no allure to learn more. That being said, I was moved by the choreography in this film.
Well, part of that was really some of the sound design. Like, you hear the shuffling and the sliding, and like when people throw out an arm, you hear the hoof and the I don't know, something is snapping.
Probably like Stomp.
We're into Stomp.
That's what Stomp boys.
That's good. You want to go Stomp?
Yeah.
No, just the I mean, we're talking about dance, so talking about movement. It's like I've never seen dance before, but that's how it felt. It gave me new eyes to the art and a new appreciation.
Well, I think I agree with you on that. I think a large portion of the audience may not understand the complexity that goes along with coordinating a dance and the film and making it all work as well as it did. So I suspect there was a lot of behind-the-scenes action that can be attributed to the success of this.
It's definitely all these corresponding parts, right? You have like this amazing choreographer. Even the graphic design is amazing. And I think a lot of this has to do with Luca's vision of this thing. And that's I want to talk about that a little bit, because just the direction alone kept me entertained for so much of this movie.
Yeah, the movie is 2.5 hours long, and you definitely know that watching it, and you may zone out like I did, but it's never boring. The pacing is great. The spacing of the horror, the extreme horror elements are masterfully placed. But that being said, there are some times where you will kind of zone out and just kind of check out for a moment.
Okay, it has very intentional plotting, but I don't think I felt a lot of it because I was so moved by how the direction changed as soon as they arrived to the school, and all of a sudden it went from quick cuts to long oneers with a kind of a shaky camera or quick zoom-ins, and they felt emotional and supportive of the story, not just like stylistic flourishes. Even in the beginning, the way that Chloe Grace Moretz interacts with certain objects, you just see her you see her touch the surface of this like velvet bench, and you just see like the tension there. And one of the final shots is of the country home and with new inhabitants in this country home, and the contrast that's naturally there between the shade and the light coming through the leaves, and then how it's all turned into this really low contrast image. The stock of the film is really beautiful, the colors. I could play this on mute and just like watch it for hours and hours. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is a beautiful film. But as just a casual film fan, I would say, it did look beautiful, and the aesthetic is incredible. The setting I loved. I wanted to turn my entire home into a replica of late 70s Cold War Germany. I love the way it looked.
Such a bummer.
I need it. I love the way it all looked. It was a beautiful film.
I think there's a responsibility too on the filmmakers and all the actors to hold up to this vision of the movie, or the idea that they're remaking a movie from the 70s. I think I read that Dakota Johnson took like 2 years of dance and ballet practice prior to filming. Between that and then representing the art of dance in a film, but using it to service the film's ideas, there was a huge opportunity for failure here. And I think that they all pulled their weight and made it really beautiful.
Let's jump into the big thorn on all of our sides.
Tilda Swinton playing a man who is playing an old man is one of the dumbest things and the worst decisions I think I've seen someone make in a otherwise fantastic movie. It borderline ruins the movie for me. It's so distracting. The choice is so strange and seemingly self-serving that I can't see how they think the film benefits from it.
When I realized this near the end of the movie, I was excited because I thought it kind of elongated this puzzle of watching the movie. You had all these clues to things that the movie didn't tie up nicely for you, so you kind of left the theater engaged in a way that other movies don't do. But now as I'm realizing they just did it for fun because she has a lot of range and wants to play multiple actors in one movie, that totally ruins it for me as well. Besides playing that character, she also played Mother Marcos at the end.
Which, that's fine. I mean, get in there, because we don't care. We can't barely understand a word that she's saying.
Yeah, you're fully masked. I actually think that performance was pretty great.
Yeah, that would be fine. Like that, and that is fine. It's just when you have a main character looking like Johnny Knoxville and Bad Grandpa, I mean, how am I supposed to take this seriously? It's again like adding these seemingly comic or silly elements to an otherwise very serious film that just breaks the illusion for me. It really, I know that I'm looking at someone in prosthetics, and I don't understand why that needs to be.
Well, the thing is too, I recognized it from the first scene with Chloe, because as good as prosthetics are, you still have that uncanny feeling that something's wrong. And you could recognize things like the teeth and the lip placement looked weird, the fact that one of the ears was concealed and they were wearing glasses. Those all indicated that there was either prosthetics in use or they were trying to cover up something.
I'll interject to say that while it was distracting I've seen this movie twice. It was more distracting on my second viewing. On my first one, it was kind of something I saw, I put a pin in, and it bothered me, but it didn't rip me completely out of the movie. But it's also the type of viewing experience that I typically on board for. I think I get the themes, and the movie just washes over me in a way that maybe I'm too forgiving of that choice. But I also think in the background narrative for me, this is a movie about women and how they exercise their power, and how they say it in the movie, right, that love and manipulation can share the same house. And I think there's something to that, having the emotional core of this movie, this character be played by a woman, I think is an interesting choice, even one that I think kind of failed a little bit.
Well, then what does that say, that they have a main male character being played by a woman, and the other male characters who have any screen time
Are fools.
they're being poked and prodded and turned into jokes, you know?
They make a point to humiliate and basically dominate any man in the film, whether it's the guards at the checkpoints, the police officers, and they do it with the old man as well, just tricking him,
Stripping him down.
stripping him naked, and
Showing his pee-pee.
yeah, showing his little prosthetic penis. I'm on board with that because it fits the narrative of the movie.
These women feel like they rule the world, and so
for
that's
the
what you're
most-
watching on screen, basically.
Yeah, for the most part they do, but I don't. What does that necessarily have to do with Tilda Swinton getting a wild hair and just donning full like clump
Yeah,
clump prosthetics?
And I can't
mean,
argue with it because it is pretty stupid looking. It's pretty
really
bad.
dumb. It just does a complete disservice to the film and the efforts by everyone else. To think that Tilda Swinton has to be that person is, I think, the biggest mistake of the movie.
Yeah.
And I will not shut up about it.
If it's not in service to the overall film, then they shouldn't have done it.
So, varied opinions on this movie. It seems like we all really liked it, but we're hung up on some parts, some of us more than others. Beautiful movie. I think it's worth checking out. But
I saw it on Halloween. It was the best movie to see on Halloween night. I was blown away. I want to point out, beside the set design and the cinematography, the title sequence cards and the ending credits were gorgeous.
It's all very exquisitely chosen.
Yeah, everything was done with intent, and it really pulled it off.
I love the logo. It's just really beautiful. Something we still have a question about is the post-credit sequence. If you guys got to see it, first off, if you held out for it, what do you think was going on there?
Was anything going on there?
What happened? I appreciate you guys checking this out. If you like what we're doing, if you love movies the way that we do, please clack the subscribe button down there. And I think that's gonna do it.
That's a wrap, boys.
Good night.